A very good evening to you. Welcome to another Newsmaker Live broadcast right here on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Pauly, and we're going up until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we'll be concluding with the clip that peaked. It was in 2003, there was a pilot project in the sub-region, and that is Alternative Dispute Resolution. And it has been in place now for a full 14 years. Taking effect later in 2003 and has been in many parts of the sub-region. That is seen as necessary considering the backlog of cases in our courts. And this is an initiative right now which is being spearheaded by the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court as part of its 50th anniversary. I'm talking about the promotion of alternative dispute resolution. Quite timely, I think, to discuss this issue on this evening's broadcast. My guests, court-connected mediators, Mr. Urban Delors and Mr. Dennis Springer. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Tim.
And I'm saying it's timely, primarily because of what is happening politically in the country. Before we delve into this aspect of alternative dispute resolution, let me throw something your way. And I'm not being facetious, although I'm smiling. How do we resolve those political disputes that we are experiencing right now in St. Lucia, and we have been experiencing for quite some time now? Let's start with you, Dennis.
Why you want to start with me?
Yeah.
No, personally, I think that conflict is something that we have in everyday life, you know, but it's how we handle it. This is the important thing, as far as I'm concerned. And yes, I'm a court mediator, but also that I took a little time to go and do a master's in mediation, conflict resolution and mediation. But what I was looking at more is looking at how you go about bringing peace internationally. I think that was what that course was. I also did the 40-hour course for the Eastern Caribbean Court. So really, the people like Lederac, Moore, and Folgan, Bush, these are people who have written on these things in depth. And consequently, there are means and ways in which you can bring a little bit of peace. Because I see some of the things that I'm seeing here. These people should come together with someone who is, you know, almost level-headed and talk about these things. You're not seeing this. You know, it's a ding-dong thing that goes on. And as far as I'm concerned, lots of problems that we are seeing, even politically, can be solved if people are prepared to come together and communicate properly.
Urban, clearly there's need for mediating what's happening in our country these days.
I would really want you to be more specific when you say that there is conflict or political. I forget the term you use, but give me an example, because it is difficult for me to speak to the way that we could resolve the problem.
We've had conflicts immemorial. Take, for example, this time the government is undertaking a particular project in the southern part of the island. The opposition is saying that, yes, we're in favor of development taking place in the south, but clearly there's need for some kind of renegotiation of the agreement to take place. The government is holding fast to saying that we are going ahead with this project because the people of the south of the island, they are being neglected for too long, and now it's time for us to give them some kind of reprieve. Is there a need for a mediator there?
Well, the thing about it is that when you look at the situation, the specific situation that you talk about, my understanding is that both parties are in favor of employment for the people. But, you know, it is one thing to say that you are in favor of something and it must come at the expense of so much else. And indeed, my understanding again is that the current opposition, when it was in government, had the opportunity to accept the agreement as is, and they certainly did not accept it. So in that regard, therefore, I believe that this is one situation where the opposition, SLP at this time, has a moral suasion because they had the opportunity to take the deal as is. In fact, my understanding again is that the deal as is even contains clauses that were already negotiated out when the discussion was going on with the Labour Party. So when we look at this particular one, Tim, I don't think that there is much room for a mediator, because any person can come in and see that the Labour Party has a distinct moral high ground on this one, because they had the opportunity to go for that and they didn't.
While one party has the moral high ground, what about the other party which has the authority?
You see, the thing about it is that when we have to rely on authority to determine what is right, we are going to get ourselves into trouble. Because when you consider a number of other situations, and the famous one, of course, is apartheid, the government had the authority by law to do certain things, and they to include making a determination on who would live where by law. So they had the authority, but that doesn't mean because you have the authority that you're doing what is right. And so to argue that they have the authority, to my mind, is really not looking at what we call the morality of the situation.
But does morality always take precedent over other issues, legal authority and so on?
Well, in my view,
Dennis?
I think yes. I think you have to look at things in on that standpoint, because whether it is right, it's like racism, as we just mentioned. The point is racism, is it good? Is it bad? Yes, we all know it's bad. You cannot judge people because of the complexion of their skin. I think Bob Marley was quite right when he says that we have to release ourselves from mental slavery. And maybe in this country we haven't done that yet. But going back to this idea of, as Mr. Delors was saying, that two groups, because first of all, the Labour Party had it for so long and was thinking about it, but never, committed themselves to it. And now they have committed themselves. I think to an extent, what they should be doing is getting someone or some sort of authority and let that person listen to what the two sides are saying. The public is saying something, but let us have that discussion, and not in the house. Because the moment you go into a house, you're on a different level. So let us have this open discussion with the two sides, with somebody, really moderating the whole thing, so that we can hear, the people themselves can come into that. I don't know what you think.
Well, let me tell you, and that allows us the opportunity to make a clear distinction between mediation and any other type of conflict resolution, right? Or dispute resolution, if you wish. There is, for example, you could have a tribunal, and generally a tribunal will look at the two sides and make a determination on which side was correct. But one of the critical aspects of mediation that we have to remember is that mediation is specifically between the two parties that are at conflict, where the two parties themselves determine what is the resolution, not the outside party. So as a mediator, when I mediate, I do not try to tell the parties what is right and what is wrong. The two parties determine what is right and what is wrong. Now, does that cause the process to be very long and tedious, with the two sides haggling before there's an actual settlement? I like the word haggling, and haggling is a good thing. Let me tell you why haggling is a good thing. You go to the market, let's say, and you want to buy a Dashin. The lady said it was $10, but you figure you want to pay $8. Between the two of you haggle, as it were. And at the end of the day, you decide, okay, you pay $8.50. The lady is happy, you are happy. So haggling is, in a sense... But in the end, there's no settlement, huh? Well, there might not be a settlement, yes, but more often than not, there will be, when there is a settlement, and that is critical, when there is a settlement, both parties are agreed and happy. Quite unlike a lot of other types of mediation, of conflict resolution, where because the solution comes from the outside, very often neither side is happy. How often have you heard a case at the end of a case in court? Both parties say, because the one that lost feel that they agree because they have to pay something, and the one that quote-unquote won thinks that the other person didn't pay enough. So that is one of the big disadvantages of litigation and one of the strengths of mediation, because in actual fact the parties get to determine what they believe would be useful.
And not only that, I think that mediation, you have the mediator there. Mediation is not adversarial. That is the other thing. That is very important. The lawyers are there, maybe, to speak to their client, but not to the mediator. The mediator himself or herself wants to hear the two sides. That person speak, not interrupted, then that person speaks, and then the mediator listens. So and it's not adversarial. The moment that the lawyers try to, you have to make them understand this is not, you have your client, you can advise your client, but you cannot tell me what to, as the mediator.
But Mr. Delors...
But let me say, in addition to what Mr. Springer has just said, because the mediator's major role is to enable the two parties to speak to each other.
Exactly.
And to have one another. So, to a large extent, what I consider to be the most successful mediation I've ever done was one when we had the discussion and we were talking, and after a while the two parties actually started talking to each other without me, saying, Gaston, you mean that? And between the two of them, they came up with their own solution without me being there. For me, that was the most successful mediation I'd ever done, because they didn't even have to speak to me. Because in mediation, the whole objective is to try to get the parties to talk to each other. Initially, they may not be talking to each other, but then you try to get to that point.
Considering the backlog of cases that have certainly plagued the judiciary or the judicial system in the Caribbean over several years now, why do you think it would have taken so long from the pilot stage then to the actual implementation of this alternative dispute resolution project for it to come into force in the first place?
The thing about it is that, as you rightly pointed out, it took some time. I think it was around 2003, because I think I started mediating 2003. Yeah, because I started mediating sometime around 2005, and
that's right.
And I've actually done over 150 cases. So which means it has been there for a good long while now.
So in Creole we call you avocat tipapio?
No, it's not an avocat tipapio. The point about it, you want to be facetious, but that's all right. But no, not avocat tipapio at all, because as I said, the critical thing is that I don't know any law. I don't want to know any law, because mediation is not about knowing law. Mediation is about getting people to talk about how they feel. It's getting people to understand each other's perspective. It's getting people to come to arrangements that they feel comfortable with. But going back to the main question that you asked, as it relates to backlog, we appreciate that there was a backlog, and that, for my money, although it started as the main purpose for the mediation, it seems to me now that the idea of a backlog is really a secondary effect of mediation, because the more important and critical role or outcome of mediation is that people get an opportunity to talk about their differences, about their disputes, and not only to talk about it, but to resolve the disputes. For me, that is even more important than the whole matter of the backlog of cases.
But talking about the backlog, I must mention that to you that in places like Australia insists that 90% of cases must go to mediation first, right? Before, except criminal cases. And that, in a sense, has made Australia a country where the judicial process can be really move on, because the mediation has allowed that to happen, because any judge would say, has that gone to mediation, right? And if it hasn't gone to mediation, he thinks it should have been to mediation, so it goes to mediation. So you have time now for your criminal cases. And what we are having here is the backlog of criminal cases.
What obtains in St. Lucia? What would influence a judge or cause a judge to advise the parties, or the feuding parties, if you want to put it that way, to take the route of mediation?
Well, I tend to think that the judge is looking at the case and saying, well, you know, when you think about it, because mediation, when you look at the course of a case and course of mediation, you know, and bringing people together because it is not adversarial, I think that the judge, if he is a good judge, would say, yes, go to mediation. And I think that a lot of them are beginning to do that. And I think that is very important, you know, going to mediation.
You say
Yeah,
that...
I think that again, one of the things we must remember is that at least initially it was only civil cases that went to mediation, because at the end of the day you will realize that criminal cases, and that's a critical point, criminal cases are really between the state or the people, right, and the individual, right. The prosecution represents the people, and the defense attorney will represent the person who is alleged to have committed the crime. So that's a completely different situation to a civil case, because in a civil matter, the two people are really, you know, one is party A, one is party B. Recently, however, I shouldn't say however, fortunately, recently the mediation process has actually extended
To family.
to family, and in
Family
St.
court,
Lucia we call family and divorce.
Yeah.
And again, a critical thing about that is that we believe that if we can enable people to resolve the difficulties that they have in the family, right, and you have people, children coming into homes and so on that are well nurtured and well organized, that in the long run there will be a vast decrease in crime. So that, and that is a really positive strategic position that the court has taken to support such a move.
Now, in the final analysis, don't you think that sometimes it's to the detriment of the parties if you go the mediation route? Does it always work?
Well, again, one of the things about mediation, I should have said to you, is that mediation always happens voluntarily. It is always if the person wants to mediate and to do the mediation. So, and not only that, even if they have started the mediation, at any point in time that they want to end it, they can end it. So if you believe that you are not going to be come out of it you know, it's not beneficial to you, then you can end it. But you see, but notice that again, because you get the opportunity to discuss what you want along with the other party, then there's a decreased likelihood that you will not get what you want. Because if it cannot happen, then it cannot happen. But it is a much better approach because, as Mr. Springer said, there's a decrease in cost. You know, because by the time the attorneys have to go and prepare for the long version of the trial is going to be very costly. So that alone.
If Mr. Springer,
well, let me give you something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also, looking at the case, which I have done before, and I have not got paid, because looking at the case, I couldn't see what much in it. So I said to the two lawyers before the mediation, gentlemen, could you just look at this case? You know, talk about it between yourselves. He says, well, because I said I can't really. So they went. 20 minutes later, they knocked on my door to say to me they've solved it. And then I said, gentlemen, what was it? What was it? What was the problem? One said he had written a letter to me, and I thought it was offensive, a little bit offensive. So I took, that. But now, speaking about it, he didn't mean it in that sense. Now, here I didn't get paid, but as far as I was concerned, it was a form of mediation that the two coming together and working it out. Two lawyers.
Is the lesson out of this that if we give greater importance, attach greater importance to conflict resolution, then there will not be any need for the backlog of cases, especially at the civil level, or even criminal cases. What say you, Mr. Dola?
Well, as I said, I did say specifically as it relates to the family thing that is one. But you make a good point, because I think that, and I alluded to that earlier when I said that very often when you have had litigation, neither party is happy. No. You don't normally. Neither party is happy, and there would be underlying animosity that, notwithstanding that there has been a verdict on the case, and that may lead to other difficulties importantly as well is that the bad blood
Long-term, long-term
exactly,
animosity.
so it's still there. The bad blood does not is not removed, but then with mediation again,
It's therapeutic.
it's therapeutic,
Yeah.
and you get the opportunity to, as I said, talk about what hurt, how you feel about the situation. One of the critical things from my perspective. Now, I didn't get that from any book and so on, and neither was that an integral part of the training. But I will share with your viewers and with you that, to my mind, one of the critical things about mediation is that it provides opportunity to explore people's emotions, quite unlike law. Law is black and white.
That's right.
So that is how it is. As you said, that's what the law says, right? But sometimes, as somebody said, sometimes the law is an ass, right? And people who are in law, the juries, they know that. However, that is that is how they do things. There's jurisprudence, and that's how they do things, and that's how they have to do things. It's just. Let me just use an analogy here. It's like mathematics and poetry. You see what I'm saying? If you're going to do things mathematically, you have to be particularly logical. But if you're going to do poetry, what you appeal to is different, is the emotion. So I think in that regard, mediation is akin to the emotion. It's akin to, but I believe it provides the opportunity to look at how people feel, and once you deal with how they feel, then you're more likely to get long-term solutions to the
But it's not only that. You bring in people are coming and people are communicating. Because people sometimes come, even at mediation, very emotional also. But I think by just being able to listen to each other, what each other has to say, and then there's the mediator there, allowing each side to have their say. I think that is more important, because now people have an opportunity to listen to each other, whereas before, as far as they were concerned, I don't have to talk to you. I ain't talking to you because I just go to court. You get what I'm saying? So now you have a different scenario in that sense of the word. They have to go into mediation. They have to listen to each other, what one has to say, and cannot intervene whilst the person is speaking. So because that's the role of the mediator. So that, for me, it is very important, where people are now being able to communicate with each other, listen to each other, and I think that way they then have to think, was I right, was I wrong, that sort of thing, and it helps like hell.
The fact, Mr. Spring, that you're not really a judge in a matter in the case of that matter, do you think that therefore that you get the kind of respect that a judge would get in terms of how you preside over a particular matter that is before you?
Well, in the cases I've done, I've felt that I have been respected, because at the end of the day, I think it's only one case that I have not been able to solve, and they went to court and they had quite a bit to pay, and consequently people come to the conclusion, yes, what you're saying is quite right, and we come to an agreement together, because you say, here's what I see, here's what I see on that side. When you bring the two sides together, you know what I mean, you find that people then say, well, okay, because I at first I didn't see it that way, but now at least I'm getting out. It's a win-win situation. That is the important thing, a win-win situation, not that, I'm not happy with this, It's a win-win situation.
Mr. Dolo, I understand that the respective parties would have to agree to which individual will serve as a mediator.
Yes.
That would appear to be a difficult process, no?
No, not really. I mean, let me ask you.
Can people be distrustful?
Well, if you just do take the person. That's all. I mean, because, for example, like I am. Let's say you are an employer, right? And you have some dispute with a worker, and you have a choice of mediators, and one of them is Urban Dolo. But remember, Urban Dolo was president of the Central State Teachers Union. Therefore, you believe he will have a bias towards the workers. You just don't select him, But I wanted to just make a very quick point on the matter you made about the respect as a judge and so on. Timothy, there is respect that what we call institutional authority, where you have people, quote unquote, respect you simply because of the position you hold. Right? You're a judge, you're a police, you're a teacher, you're a priest, you're a newspaper columnist or whatever. not the newspaper columnist. So
Journalist, talk
I was being
shows.
facetious on that one.
You were talking about Springer.
I was being facetious there.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, but there are certain positions, like I said, the first four: police, lawyer, teacher, that you respect them simply because of the position that they hold. So it's the position that has the authority, not you. There are other positions, for example, your doctor, right? That when your doctor tells you to do something, there is a little bit of positional authority too, but he has your ear because you know that he understands your body and what he's doing for you is good. That is the kind of authority I think mediators should aim for, as opposed to just because I'm a mediator, you have to respect me. To my mind, because as I said, mediation is a different approach to conflict resolution. So I don't want to come there and you respect me or you listen to me simply because I'm the mediator. I want you to listen to me and to take regard of what I'm saying, because what I'm saying makes sense. It appeals to your thinking. It appeals to your feelings.
If somebody is over emotional, do you think they run the risk of not being reasonable and not being logical? And anything you would say, anything you'd propose, therefore, would not resonate with them.
And that is why, from the day one, remember I started off by telling you that the first thing I do as a mediator is that I try to understand why people feel the way they do. Because it is only after I understand why you are feeling like this that I'm in a position now to make suggestions and to help the other side see why you are holding that position. Right? Because very often people take a position and they hold that position simply because of their emotions. And once you disentangle that, then you are more likely to be able to make progress in terms of getting to a solution.
You're watching.
By the way, you know, most of our decisions are actually based on emotions rather than rational. So when you talk about people being overly emotional and preventing them from being rational, even then you have to take into account that when people make decisions that are based on emotions, that they are more likely to feel comfortable with it rather than just rational.
You're watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with my two guests, once again, Uben Delor and Dennis Springer. They are both court-connected mediators. Back in a moment to continue the discussion, and later, your calls. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Newsmaker Live on DBS Television with my guests, once again, Mr. Uben Delor and Mr. Dennis Springer, court-connected mediators. Earlier on, we were talking about, and we've heard about this, the cost of litigation and so on. It's beyond the reach of many people in the St. Lucian society. Let's talk about the cost involved when a matter is being mediated upon. What's the cost like?
The cost is measly $400 per person.
Yep.
When I say per person, I mean the parties, I should say per party.
Irrespective of the length of the matter?
Not irrespective of length. It is 3 hours initially, and I think it is $250 for every hour after that. But for the most part, I have not done many mediations that go past the 3 hours, and if it does go past the 3 hours, it's at most 2 hours, not more than that. So all told, each person will pay at most, from my perspective, $900.
Yeah.
400
each.
400 for the first 3 hours, and $250 for each additional hour. And as I've said to you, I've not done a case that went past the 2 hours, because quite frankly, I found that if you go in past the 5 hours, right, 3 plus 2, chances are there is a major stumbling block which prevents mediation from happening.
Or is it the case where the respective parties are taking note of the time and also the cost involved? No,
because none of the cases I have done have taken more than the time allocated, sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours, but always within the time limit. When it has not is when I said that that particular lawyer decided to tell his clients, that it's better to go to court, but then they went to court, and from what I heard, it was they had to pay quite a bit.
What's the reception you're getting from the lawyers? Because I'm sure that you're eating into whatever monies that they'll be making.
Not at all.
You getting any kind of opposition from them?
Not at all. For the most part, lawyers are very cooperative.
Very.
And indeed, there are some lawyers who will leave the mediation room to ensure that the clients do not lean on them too much, because the mediation is actually between the parties.
The parties concerned.
But if the lawyers are there and the parties are at a disadvantage?
No, again, because you have to go back to the premise of the mediation. And the premise of the mediation is that the two parties have it within them to come up with a solution. So it's not a disadvantage. Because what would happen is that at the end of it all, what we would need the lawyers for is to ensure, for example, that whatever solution you come to is not something that is against the law in the first place. For example, one person might say, okay, well, to appease you, I'll give you two kilograms of cocaine. I'm just being facetious, right? The lawyers will say, no, you can't do that because that's against the law. But but for the most part, I have found lawyers to be quite.
And it's not only that, they realize too they are not, it cannot be adversarial. As I mentioned to you, it is the mediator himself or herself is talking to the two people who are there. The lawyers are just there to advise. Especially when you bring them in, the two different groups, the lawyers can talk then, and to their client.
Are the outcomes legally binding, Mr. Springer?
Yes,
they are.
I'll tell you why. Because and it is a good segue in from what you were talking about, the role of the lawyers, because one of the things that the lawyers do is once they have come to an agreement, gentleman's agreement, right? They may not be saying it in legal terms. So what the lawyer will do is to write it in such a way that it is very specific, and that document that agreement between the parties that we have arrived at, that document then goes to the courts. And that's why we call it court-associated mediation. It goes to the court, and the judge who was adjudicating the case will then make that agreement an order of the court. You hear me? So which means then that
if there's any breach,
then it will be in contempt of court as per usual.
But it's not only that, both clients sign to that effect. They have to sign. And the lawyers themselves, the things.
The lawyers sign as well, but importantly, that is still within mediation. But very importantly, that document that they have signed,
gone to the court,
because the judge will then make it an order of the court. Exactly. And that gives it all the weight it requires to be legally binding. So your question is a good one.
And for people to understand that, what I mean.
That is not just
going to mediation is very important. At the end of the day, that is what happens.
I'm quite familiar with that particular matter because recently I was in court with 3 individuals.
And
it went down that particular route.
You went to mediation.
So I'm asking you a lot of questions. I know the response already. I know the answer.
So you went to mediation.
And how did you find it? I mean,
how
tell
did
the
you find it?
what you want about it. Give your perspective.
I find it was not stressful. It was very straightforward, and I think you made a particular point where you said that the parties get an opportunity to speak freely on a particular matter. A lot of emotion would come out, but in the end, it's so cathartic. It purges your system, and you feel okay about it, and then you walk out of that mediation room satisfied. And it would take, in my particular case, about, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes.
So all of the things I was talking in theory there, I then busted my brain trying to explain and so on to the audience. You were in a very good opportunity. You really, we ought not to have teased that out of me, You really ought to have started by saying, ladies and gentlemen, I have two associated court-connected mediators, but I must say that I have done a mediation and it
would not have been so appealing.
And it's as they are saying, actually, so I can now say for certain that that's how I felt.
But I perspired speaking about that. You realize that?
Yeah.
Okay, but And what would cause you guys to want to be mediators, Mr. Dollar?
Well, in my case, at the time I became a mediator, I was the president of the Central Teachers Union. And I believe that they were looking around for persons who would have to deal with situations of conflict and provided me the opportunity. Let me take the opportunity as well to say that as we move forward, we are seeing a new cadre of persons who ought to be trained to be mediators. And I mean, we've been going to schools and so on, and one of the schools we went to was the Mico Secondary. And at the end of our discussion, I was there with Dr. Urban Serafin, the two Urbans were there. And a student came to us and said that she felt that the prefects in the schools should be given some opportunity to train as mediators. And I think, I mean, to my mind, I have not really made a report and to the people who organize this, but I'm saying publicly that to my mind that is a very good idea. We begin with the children from the school and provide them with training to be mediators.
Exactly.
Because there are a number of different circumstances where people can serve as mediators, whether they are prefects in schools, whether they are club presidents, whether they are club coaches, where people who would be would be in a position to influence other persons. And they do it already. So why not provide them with that training?
But here you have the case. You have court mediators, people who have done the course for mediation, but they're not court mediators. But they do mediate in their constituency, in one way or the other. So mediation, being going and do a mediation course, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be a court mediator. You want to be someone who can mediate in your own constituency in little problems that are going on, because you have a little bit of expertise in that area. And I think that the majority of this country, the country on the whole, needs that sort of thing more. And as Urban was saying, the youngsters themselves, as they become prefects and things that sort, they should be doing a sort of course that deals with that, so that it gives them an input. And later, they can become excellent mediators, court mediators. So I think it is going in the right direction.
As a court mediator, who are you answerable to, Mr. Dollar?
Nobody.
Why?
Nobody. Well, because I'm not answerable to anybody. The people select me, I go do the mediation. As I said, if it is successful, the order is, whatever we agree to goes to the court. The court, neither of the lawyers, neither of the parties can ask me to come in to give any kind of evidence, because it is strictly confidential.
Exactly.
So if you came to mediation and you diverge something, but you don't want to diverge it back in court, nobody can say, but when you were in mediation, you said so and so, right? Because that is strictly off the record.
Exactly.
So I'm answerable to nobody.
Isn't there a danger in this?
Tell me
Considering
No,
your level of influence over the respective parties, do you
No, but you're not. But
do
it's
you
not your level of
do you
of
run the
both
risk
parties.
of in any way influencing a particular outcome?
I am not interested in influencing, and if I do influence, I influence in a way that will serve both parties. Let me give you.
You have to be objective too.
Yeah. Let me give you one of the strategies we use in mediation, which is called a caucus.
Yes.
Where you actually take each party separately and try to talk to them.
Yeah.
But whatever you discuss in the caucus, you cannot reveal it to the other party.
The other party.
You see? So the whole idea as the mediator is that you are really trying to carve out a solution. Because sometimes the parties, as you rightly pointed out, sometimes the emotions are there and they're not thinking straight. You make suggestions. Okay? Now, one of the things as a mediator you try to avoid as well is that you do not want to take a position that is prejudicial to either one side or the other.
Side, yeah.
Because as soon as you do that, then the other side may harden their position. You see, the mediator agrees with me. As a mediator, you don't agree with anybody. Right? If you believe that one side may adjust their position, as I said, you probably do a caucus and speak to them privately and say, listen, that position you're taking there, to me, it looks a little strange.
Yes.
You may want to compromise here because, and that sort of thing. But remember, you cannot go back and tell the other side that you said so. So I am accountable to anybody.
At times, can it prove very, very difficult because of somebody's lack of grasping, being able to grasp certain issues,
But the
certain
point is,
principles.
that's where the caucus comes in. And you can have the person and explain to the person, because sometimes you get certain, of the parties that are much stronger than the other. And consequently, what you can do when you were talking about that sort of mediation is to advise, to go into that, but not taking sides per se, but is advising, about, and to make the people feel a little bit comfortable when they are speaking. Because what you get sometimes is that some people are definitely far more stronger than others, and that has to be taken into consideration.
Yes, but and you make a good point, Timothy, because sometimes you may very well find that there may be certain principles associated with what you as a mediator may consider to be a useful way of dealing with the problem. So, for example, let's say you did a mediation and there are 10 parcels of land to be separated between the two, and you may feel, why not do it 5-5, okay? But one person will say to you, but no, I don't want to do it 5-5. I want it 9-1 because most of that land I got it because of my father, right? Now you have to try to figure out how can you help them understand. Okay, but it may be that there's a principle involved that you don't understand, right? As opposed to the person not coming to a solution because they don't understand your principle, but do you understand their principle? And so as the mediator, again, and I go back, and you have to now go back and try to understand the individual. Why are you taking that position? Try to understand why the individual is taking that position. And once you understand why the person is taking that position, you may then be in a better position to help the other person see why this person is saying 9-1. And after all, that person might not go for 9-1, but might decide, okay, well, boy, based on what they're saying, I will go for 8-2 or even 7-3 as opposed to the 5-5. So sometimes you may think the person has a principle that you don't understand, that looks unreasonable, but then when you really understand it, it might be quite.
Mr. Springer, what's the success rate of the whole mediation process in St. Lucia, as far as you're aware?
Well, I haven't got figures to give you, but to be honest, if we are listening to other mediators as to what they have been doing, then it is quite successful in that regards, and I think
the mathematician will help us with that.
Urban has his stuff.
Mr. Dollar.
I'll give you the figures we have for 2016. There were a total of 164 matters were referred. 127 were actually held, because again, it might be referred by the person doesn't select to come to do the mediation. Out of that 127, 50 were settled, and 55 required further mediation. So only 19 were not settled. Out of the 127 that actually came, right, only 19 were not settled. 50 were settled totally, and 55.
That's a high success rate.
It is a high success rate.
I imagine that you guys are held, not to blow your trumpet, but you're held in high esteem in terms of the contribution that you're making to the process and the whole talk about the backlog of cases and so on. Mr. Springer?
I always felt, to be honest with you, that being a mediator or going into mediation and doing things like that, that's why I went on further and went on to London University and did the Masters, because I do believe that mediation is, especially in the sort of violent world that we are in, that you need people who can at least bring two sides together. And consequently, especially in St. Lucia, I'm hoping that a lot more St. Lucians will consider that this is a good option to go to mediation, because half the time the mediation can solve things. Even little conflicts, you have conflict resolution methods to use, and especially in the big organizations, all these things, labor disputes, it is most important. And instead of this angriness and nastiness to each other, and you can go and speak to each other, listen to each other, because communication, 80% of communication is listening. So doing that, I think it's most important to be able to to at least bring people together. That's what it's all about, you know.
What are most of the cases you're seeing, Mr. Dola?
Most of the cases that I've seen would be traffic, family land, contracts. Contracts is perhaps the one that I've seen the most of. Different types of contracts, but a lot of the contracts has to do with people who related to houses. You know,
Would land be the most contentious?
well, land has a lot of emotions in it.
A lot of it.
A lot of emotions because. And what we will find most of the times, like there's a parcel of land and the number of members of family living on the land, and somebody wants to sort of partition out their piece, and they're trying to decide like how they're going to partition it out, and almost invariably, this more than one person will want the same parcel. So you know, so that is that. These are one of the more challenging ones. But again, with a little bit of gerrymandering and so on, once you understand their needs. Once you understand their needs, you know, why do you want it like that? It's because of that. I have a shop there, or you know, and so you try to figure it out. But so these are the cases we've been doing, and of course, recently, as I said, we've also started doing family cases, and to date, I've actually done 2. I can say I know the number because we only started doing that this
Recently,
month.
yes.
So I've done 2 related to family. So we're moving along.
What attributes would you require to be a mediator, a court mediator, Mr. Springer, in your estimation?
Well, just to have a good educational background, you know, and not only that, and you have to be interested in that sort of area of work and things of that sort. It is not something that pays a highly paid thing. So it is basically contributing your little bit to society. And if you have a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of brains, then it helps a lot, you know, to be able to make that little sacrifice and become a mediator. And I think that's all it needs is wanting to solve things, bring people together. And I think that's what mediation is all about.
Yeah, in addition to that, we have to be mindful as well that we are doing court-connected mediation. There are some jurisdictions where mediation plays very well because, for example, you actually work on a percentage basis, you know, and so that's important. I believe that also not only should you be versed because clearly there are documents you have to read and so on, but very importantly, it is as Mrs. Springer said, you have to be able to listen carefully. You have to be able to listen, and I'm also finding as well that you have to be able to explain things in different ways, so that when one person says one thing, the other person may, again, as you said, because of the block, the emotional block, they're not hearing. But you have to say, well, yes, but you are saying the same things. You know,
Yeah, correct.
Very often you have to say.
And you must, I imagine, I deduce from what you're saying that you must be able to keep your cool as well.
Oh yes, that's essential. That's essential. That's
A
essential.
mediator cannot come across as being so frustrated, so flustered.
It's essential that you don't show that emotion. You know what I mean? You cannot show emotion for either side. You have to be, it's almost like saying, I have to be straight-faced. You know, and because you have to be objective, you know, at least 100% as much as you can. You know, I mean, you cannot show any subjectivity. So this is, for me, excellent. You know what I mean? Because you cannot take sides.
Mr. Polio, the point that Mr. Springer made is absolutely essential. You cannot take sides because once it is perceived that you are taking sides, you are not likely to get a mediation. So much so that part of the training that we get is before the mediation starts, right? You don't even want to be in the room alone with one party if the other party is not there. Because as soon as you do that, the other party coming in, seeing you there with them, will be suspicious. And that's it. Valfini Vilon, you know? So that whole idea of being, you know, as unemotional about the thing as possible is really important.
Now, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, as part of its 50th anniversary, is promoting the public education exercises and so on. How important do you think it is to sell this process to the public, Mrs. Springer?
I think that what they're doing is excellent in because it is necessary, and it is something that was long overdue in that sense of the word. Because we hear mediation, we hear about mediators and things of that sort, but a lot of people, in a sense, have not really understood what mediation is about. You know, going to that
Because
form of,
it has not been sold to them.
exactly, because we are so used to this
promoted.
court business. You know, it's tut by noni po ale
Lodias.
lodias. It's tut by say lodias. Or chual mamunka yoka we las lanye on lot by yo sale epi fesa yoni pou faire. That is for me very important now, because they now have the alternative. And the alternative is not because going to court is not easy. You know, people are trembling, people are
Tense.
all tense like hell. You know, and then they have to go and stand there. Whereas mediation, you go, you sit, you know what I mean, and you explain yourself, and they give you a chance to explain. You have a chance to listen to the other side and things of that sort. You know, in the caucus you can speak again. You know, and I think that you know, you really engaging people, you know, into what mediation is about is the best thing that they could have done. Because really, people now, more people will say, yes, I'll go to mediation. That will unclog our system.
Is it really working in terms of unclogging the system, Mr. Dono?
I think it is because, and I say that because, for example, when we started mediating in 2025, we were probably doing cases that went back to things like 2001, 2000, 1999, you know, those kinds of things. But over the years, we have gradually been dealing with the cases. So, for example, in 2017, we are dealing, as far as the last mediation I did was something that came up in December 2016. You know, so which means that maybe by December, maybe August, September, we'll be doing cases for 2017, so that we would come up to, you know, catch up. So yeah, I think as far as civil cases is concerned, are concerned, we have certainly removed some of the back.
You're watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with me, Timothy Polion, and my two guests, Mr. Urban Delors and Mr. Dennis Springer. When we come back, your calls. Welcome back. We'll put the telephone number on screen right now so that you can call with your questions and comments for my two guests. Once again, Mr. Urban Delors and Mr. Dennis Springer, court-connected mediators, and the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, as part of its 50th anniversary, promoting the use of mediation as a means of alternative dispute resolution. And this particular initiative has been underway over the last 14 years, started through a pilot project early in 2013 and was instituted late of that same year, that's sometime in December of 2003. So it has been in effect now for almost 14 years. So we take your calls for my two guests once again. How do you see the way forward for the whole mediation process, gentlemen?
Well, I alluded to that earlier, where I mentioned that we think that, well, at least I think that mediation should be made available, or training in mediation should be made available to other persons within the community who are leaders. I also believe that eventually mediation can also be used. We have gone into the family court now, that mediation can also be used for some criminal events, for some criminal activities, particularly when those criminal activities do not have serious implications, because clearly, as I said before, recall that criminal activities are really against the state and against the people of St. Lucia. But I think that there are certain cases, particularly if you're looking at juveniles, where you know, the juvenile may have done something, stolen something, etc., where even the person who was wrong be more interested in restorative justice. In other words, just getting back what they had lost rather than punishing the individual. I think in cases like that, there may be mediation as well.
But the other thing that we have to know in this country, in England, for example, the majority of magistrates are lay magistrate, lay people, not lawyers as we have here. So consequently, you know, and mediators, a lot of mediators are not lawyers. So really, I see no problem in extending mediation to that far more than we have done so far. Now we've gone to the family. That is good. I mean, then we now can push it further and release. For me, it is releasing the court as much as possible, because you can't tell me somebody is sitting in Baudelaire for 4, 5 years, 6 years sometimes. Somebody's told me 8 years, and they haven't gone to court because the court system is so clogged up. This to me is unacceptable. I don't care who's in power. It is unacceptable, and I'm sure the lawyers themselves are thinking that way too. Although in cases that where money is involved, who knows? It is costly. So let us accelerate the process if we can. I don't know if the Eastern Caribbean Court is prepared to go too quickly, but I would say let us move things on now, family, and go on further. And I think it is essential.
Further to other areas.
Yes.
Which
yes.
areas do you think?
Well, Mr. Delors just alluded to even some minor criminal cases that can be, be seen by mediation.
If somebody is caught with a small quantity of, let's say, marijuana, is that an issue that you'll look at as well? No, that's against the state.
Yeah,
Yes,
against the
yes,
state.
yes.
I mean, in some cases you need to have sort of legal changes, but
Yes,
that's
yes.
a different matter.
Yeah.
But if, for example, you said minor criminal matters, I also think there's a matter of criminal activities of minors.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
And again, I am inclined towards looking at criminal activities of minors, and as I said earlier on, without having such minors to have a prohibitive criminal record, at when they can in fact be given an opportunity to live without that record. I think that these are some of the things that we can look at for mediation, but again, there would have to be certain reforms and so on within the justice system to deal with that.
Now, what's about constant retooling in terms of you educating yourself as a mediator? And you think there's a need to constantly do that, Mr. Springer?
Yes, I think refresher courses is very important, and not only that, I think that mediators too have to come together to talk about different things, certain cases, because it helps with giving others experience of what has been taking place and things of that sort. I think that it is essential that we keep pace with what is going on, and other mediators can help each other in that sense of the word, because he has done some cases that I don't know about. I have done maybe some that he, and I think that it is good to, even what you've heard tonight, that people are coming with emotions, and we have to have means and ways of, getting them to just settle down and listen and things of that sort. And sometimes, as we said before, mediator can't get upset, he can't show any sort of emotion, but new mediators, having the experience of those who have mediated before, need that sort of guideline and things like that.
About how many mediators?
Before you go any further on that, let me say, based on what you've said, and in terms of providing support for mediators, interestingly, we started a group called Mediators Forum. We've got to the point where we actually have we've registered as a non-profit company and so on. We've actually done things like our code of conduct, and those kinds of things have been done. And what we need to do now is really to formally launch the forum. And it's just a small step that we need to do, and we're hoping that over the next few weeks, say within 6 to 8 weeks, we would get the opportunity to do that, so that we would have a forum where all mediators, including non-court appointed mediators, because as Mr. Smith said, there are a number of mediators who are not appointed to the court, because we have I think it's about 41
Yeah, I think so.
mediators.
41 court-appointed mediators?
Yes,
About that.
and from all walks of life, we have people, but we have over 200, I would think. I don't know the figure, but I know it's a lot more than 40
Yes,
something
it's a
that
lot
have been
more.
trained. And so again, these people will get the opportunity to understand some of the people who are actually doing the court mediation, and also we can get from them some of the mediation that they're doing in schools, in clubs, and so on.
All walks of life, really.
What would you envisage happening to our court system without the mediators?
Well, if we didn't have mediation right now, I don't know what would have happened. In fact, you could rest assured that our court system would be in disarray. That's how I would see it, you know. I mean, because mediation has really been of a tremendous help as far as the court system is concerned. Personally, I think that it is not because I'm a court mediator or anything, but I think it helps society to know that I can go and I have a man there who is not a judge but who would listen. You know, I feel more comfortable. I don't feel that as though it doesn't matter whether the people go to court. The moment they go to court, they have this sort of criminal thing about a courthouse, and you realizing that is not so now. You're going and you're going to listen to, you know, there'll be a mediator there, and I can listen to the next person that I have the problem with and things of that sort. I may be in a mood too. I may be emotional, but at least, you know, I don't have this judge standing there to say order, 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 you know, things of that sort. You know.
I think you know the Constitution says that in many cases the client cannot even speak.
Yeah.
You know, you just sit down there. If you have to say something, I will say to your lawyers.
Yes, correct.
That's you know, you're really out of it.
Do you interact with other mediators in the sub-region, your peers in the other islands, because you have the similar program taking place in the other islands?
Well, actually, I must say we don't. At least I don't. There are a couple of mediators in St. Lucia, you know, who probably would do that, but primarily because we provide training to persons outside of St. Lucia. I thought that the training we went to in Antigua about a month and a half ago would have provided the platform for us to do that, but it hasn't quite happened. But you make a good point. I think at some point in time we may very well want to look at an OECS, in the first instance, association of mediators, so that we get to interact. One of the things that is very important as it relates to that is the difference in law and in the basis for law in a lot of the countries. St. Lucia is particularly different. Because I think we based on code law or something. We have a lot of code. We have criminal code. We have civil code and so on. Whereas a lot of the other countries have statutes. So even the way that these things are actually handled are very different in some of these countries. But again, knowing what is happening in the other countries and being exposed and the opportunity to discuss is very much the same way we can discuss among mediators in St. Lucia. And the point you make about having something at the regional level will also be very, very useful.
But you see, Trinidad, for example, the area as such, you know, I mean, it's a little bit different to our. And I think that, in a sense, I think you need a little bit of interaction within the OECS especially, that people meet, you know, the prominent mediators, and likewise, sooner or later, others meeting, you know, to find out what is going on in their own country too, and how they're coping with things and things of that sort. I think that is necessary because, you know, talking, there's nothing that beats, you know, people exchanging ideas and views and things of that sort. And I think that helps the process on the whole. And that for me is something that they should be looking forward to.
Why do you think there's been a lack of promotion as far as this process is concerned? Because it's only now that the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court is celebrating its 50th anniversary that it has embarked upon that particular initiative. Do you think it's something that really escaped them in terms of promoting it, or do you think that it was working sufficiently well that it really did not necessitate advertising it and, you know, and introducing it to the wider society?
I don't know the answer to that one, really. I wouldn't want to venture an answer to that.
But like everything else, you know, money is necessary. They need the money.
To do what?
To do these things. So, you know, to promote things. And it's not just doing things. Like, you know, for example, try to promote it here at DBS. You have to pay something.
You're not paying anything for this? Your appearance on this show?
Yeah. Well, that's just make a lie. But on the whole, I think that is some of the problems, you know, is finding the money. to do these things, and it's not that easy.
I don't know.
But do you think there's too much mystery surrounding and encircling the judiciary, the court system,
And indeed,
where people in the wider St. Lucian society, in the society in general, in the islands and so on, where they do not understand their rights, they do not understand that there's a mediation process, they do not understand that basically there are different avenues that they can use, that they can utilize in terms of resolving their various disputes. So they're more likely to just pigeonhole an issue, forget it, store it somewhere, and just ignore it and maybe put it in God's hand.
Yeah, well, you make a good point about the mystery. And indeed, one of the things that mediation does is to demystify the process of conflict resolution. Because, as I said, it provides the parties the opportunity to understand that they have the answers, and they can make progress with that. So the fact that we are doing it late, if you may consider it, and we're doing it this year because of the 50th anniversary of the court, I think is an excellent idea, and I would think that this would serve as a catalyst for even further promotion and further demystifying, because I really think it's important for us to understand that we do not always have to go to a third power to get resolution, to get solutions. And to go back to when you started the show, you started off by trying to tie this thing into politics. But you see, one of the things about people in general is that when they begin to make progress in one area, it does not remain there. It sort of percolates to other things. And if you begin to help people to see that they are able to deal with that they're able to resolve their conflicts without going to an external power, external party, then you may very well find that some of the economic and social issues, they may also realize that they can deal with them among themselves and not have to go to an external
You've been a
power.
court-connected mediator for over the last 12 years.
How about that?
Have you ever thought about going into the legal system full-time, studying to be a lawyer, then eventually to become a judge? You never saw that question coming?
No, but I didn't see that. Not a question of didn't see the question coming. I never try to anticipate your questions, because once I don't anticipate your questions, I remain a lot more fluid. Okay, but no, I wouldn't want to become a judge. Quite frankly, at one time I found a fascination with law, primarily because not because of the mediation, but because of the logic involved in it, because it's so much like mathematics, and I always found that I like to look at different perspectives and so on. But I have since decided I don't want to do that.
Why?
A good friend of mine said to me, Urban, one of the things about being a lawyer, of studying law, is that you have to read a lot. At your age, your eyes are not the best for reading. Give up on that. He didn't know that I took him seriously, but I took his advice. So I've decided.
Dennis?
Well, in my case, I had got an unconditional offer to do law at Cambridge, and when I came down here to tell my father to say that I will be doing law, I expected him to be jumping for joy, and then he told me that if I did law and became a lawyer, he would disown me, and I couldn't understand why, and I went back to London and did social sciences instead.
I think your father was just looking for a reason to disown you, man.
He had a case for Cletus, my brother, who was near close to death when the bus overturned, and that took so damn long. And he paid so much that he gave up on lawyers, although his good friend, his best friend, was a lawyer. So I can understand. I didn't know why at the time, but later I understood.
The reputation of people in the legal system, is your reputation ever called into question as court mediators? Are you seen as people that cannot be trusted? Because people are saying that they cannot trust lawyers. There's questions about the CCJ. People prefer to go to the Privy Council.
All of that goes back to the lack of trust we have in our own, and that's exactly. And that is why I was saying once we begin to understand that we can do things among ourselves and for ourselves, then some of this trust is going to be rebuilt and so on. But with law, and Mr. Springer made the point about it being sort of contentious with litigation, and it is when you have lost a case, that emotion that you have, you must find things to them. I'm not saying that they're not lawyers who may slip every now and again, but you have to understand that because of the adversarial position that lawyers find themselves in, almost invariably, the person who you represented against will almost invariably want to say bad things about you, and will almost invariably want to believe bad things about you as well. So you have to take that into consideration when you hear all of the talk about lawyers being this and lawyers being that. You have to understand that they are in a context of they almost being set up.
We have a call. Hello, good evening. This is Newsmaker Live. Go ahead with your contribution, caller. Okay, lost the caller.
Yeah. So that is something that we have to remember. In addition to that, even lawyering, I'm just, I suppose, making up a word, but lawyering itself, you have a lot of difficulties from my meager understanding of the law, because sometimes you may go up to a point and you think you have a precedent and so on, and then somebody comes with a different one, a different precedent, and so it is not something that's clean. So all of those kinds of things.
Sometimes you might win on a technicality. So exactly. that is why Dennis, you cherish your position of being a referee who does not really take sides or allow the feuding parties to come to their own conclusion.
Correct. And not only that, as I said before, going to court, the whole paraphernalia of saying I'm going to go to a courthouse. People are standing there waiting, lawyers coming in with all their robes and things of that sort. And people now must understand that mediation is not like that.
Okay, let's see if we have a call. Hello, good evening.
Yeah?
Yes, go ahead with your contribution, please.
I think the whole problem is if you have mediators, the mediators themselves must be people of value, and I see somebody there who himself needs to be mediated.
All right, okay. Thank you so much for calling. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But we are talking about, you're making a point before we got that interruption.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying is that you go into court, that's what I was talking about, and you see what is happening, all the paraphernalia that goes on, and then you now know more or less that mediation is so important, that you don't have to go through all of that, and that you can just go in there and get the thing settled without the adversarial thing that takes place in court. I think that is the most important.
But obviously, as we observe the 50th anniversary of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, what are some of the changes you would like to see? Any changes at all as far as your work is concerned, Mr. Dolo?
You mean my work as a mediator?
As a mediator, yeah.
I couldn't say that I'm not comfortable with how things go, because most of us are not full-time mediators in a sense, so we have other jobs to do, and so we think sometimes we don't always find the time to do the mediation, and it has to be postponed and whatever. But by and large, I think we're doing a good job from my perspective, anyhow, and I don't know that there's anything I'd like to change at this time.
You would like to see any changes?
Well, the only changes I'd like to see is that the family courts and other the extension of the mediation, begins to be accelerated in that sense of the word, so that mediation now, and more promoting of mediation, I think that is most important. Because I still believe that a lot of people out there don't understand what mediation is about. They understand more the court system. So and they then put mediation in the sort of a system as the court one, if that is the case, because it's not been explained.
But in your experience, has there been buy-in by members of the public?
Well, this is what we are trying to find out now,
Yeah.
and I think this is this 50th celebration, so to speak, and coming out with mediation is to see, how much we can sell and how much people are buying in. I think that is important. After this, we will see that if we see more mediation taking place, because more mediation should be taking place.
Let's get the final comments from you, gentlemen. Let's start with you, Mrs. Springer.
Well, for me, it's good. It's the opportunity now to have this media blitz, so to speak, for mediation is very good. It's coming at a time, it's timely, and what I'm hoping is that the public now would understand what mediation is more about in schools, wherever you go, and the youngsters, as Urban was talking about, would now see mediation as something that is important, even with their little conflict at schools and things of that sort, and that will develop.
Mr. Dola?
Well, surely, I think that the principle behind the OECD, the court really supporting mediation, and in particular supporting family mediation, is really grand, because we would like to see that we don't get to the point where we have to mediate. We would much prefer to get to the point where the conflicts are at a minimum. I mean, my grandmother said to me once that your tongue and your teeth are in the same mouth, and yet still sometimes your tongue and your teeth, they get into trouble because your teeth bite your tongue. So disputes are almost invariable. But the important thing to understand is that when conflicts arise, we must see it as the opportunity to change, and to change for the better. Because when there is a conflict, clearly it means that one person does not believe that he or she is getting enough of the resources that are available. And it provides the opportunity, therefore, to get more resources so that both people can feel comfortable. I hope that at some point in time we get to the situation where people will see mediation as prestigious. I believe that in the past, persons were always quick to go to a lawyer because there was certain prestige, I believe, in going to a lawyer. And so there was this prestige. I can afford to send you to get a lawyer, and I have my own lawyer and so on. And I'm thinking that given that we can get to the point where mediation will be helping people get solutions to their problems, and they will understand that the mediation is not just a matter of that because you're not spending a lot of money, but that it is effective and that it gets problem solved. And that's what I'd like to see from mediation.
Mr. Dola, thank you so much for being my guest on this evening's Newsmaker Live, as well as Mr. Springer as well. Thank you so much for watching the broadcast. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked.
Chloe, Kylie, go in your fucking cage. Chloe, you clean up your own goddamn mess. See this shit? The garbage. Come on, pick it up. Garbage. Come on. And the garbage. Come on, pick the shit up. Put it out. Get up. You're not done. The garbage. And the garbage. Do this shit next time, you won't get in trouble. You better do this shit before I come home. Come on. The cup. Come on. Pick it up. You want some? Come on, Kylie. You can get some of this shit too. Pick it up. Throw it in the trash. Before I come home, I better do this shit every goddamn day. Because I'm done. Come on. Pick this shit up. It's not that hard. I'm German Shepherd. Y'all smart.
And that's the broadcast. Thank you so much for watching once again. My name is Timothy Paulion saying good night and see you next time.